heard some people say that Trump supporters are just blindly dancing to the sound of somebody else's tune. Today we'll be exploring whether that's the case. Hi, my name is Robin, and this is Politics and Religion at the Dinner Table. First of all, I would like to preface this video. I cannot speak for all Trump supporters. In fact, I cannot speak for any Trump supporters because I am not, and I have never been, a supporter of Donald Trump. That said, I do live in an area where it is not difficult to find someone who does support Donald Trump, and I do think this has given me some unique insight into how Donald Trump's supporters think and feel. Of course, I am not flawless in this, and I welcome any supporters of Donald Trump to give me further, more detailed information in the comments below. Now, I would actually like to start this with something that a lot of people have in common, whether they are a supporter of Donald Trump, a liberal, or any other sort of worldview, and that is, as humans, we are not purely logical creatures. We, when presented with new information, do not simply look at the evidence and decide from there whether it's true or not. We each have our own worldview, our own basic understanding of how we already believe the world to work. And when we are presented with new information, we are more or less likely to accept that new information depending on how much it fits in our already existing worldview. How able we are to override that tendency and look at the evidence largely depends on how emotionally invested we are in that particular aspect of our worldview and how much that information would conflict with our already existing identity. Now, one thing that I think all my viewers likely could agree on is that Trump supporters have a very strong emotional investment in their support of Donald Trump. Very few of them that I have met are the type to simply go in, vote for a candidate, and then just move on with their lives and just kind of forget about it. They're the type to campaign for him. They are the type to argue on his behalf. They are the type to keep supporting him through thick and thin, and they are the type to create an entire identity around their support of Donald Trump. That means if a liberal were to say come along and tell them that Donald Trump is terrible and his actions are killing people, they feel like people are saying that their choices and their personal beliefs are terrible and are getting people killed. They feel personally attacked. So they are very unlikely to listen to pretty much any amount of evidence you can provide. If you do give them information that conflicts with their worldview, they would be very likely, as would we all if somebody presented any of us with something that conflicted so deeply with our fundamental selves, go online and look for any way that this information could be incorrect. And honestly, they really don't have far that they have to look. Because one thing that Trump is very, very skilled at is campaigning, and he has not stopped campaigning for a single moment in his presidency. People who are on his email list are getting constant emails reminding them that they are part of this movement. And they are constantly getting reminders of this is why he did what he did, this is why he said what he said, and constantly giving them updates that are far more comfortable to believe than what other people are telling them. On top of that, Trump has done what he can to limit the alternate sources of information they are likely to go to. Anytime any source of media has spoken out against him or against his views, he's always like fake news, lying media, etc., etc. And even if they were to decide, I'm going to confirm this, make sure that the media really is dishonest, due to our current 24-hour news cycle, a lot of media does tend to, in order to make the news a little more interesting, incorporate editorial into the news a bit more than they should. When they do see this and they do see, oh, there are some exaggerations here, there's a bit of a spin here, it's very easy to look at what Trump's saying and say, well, that looks like it's true. And now I know a lot of people watching this would be like, well, Fox is particularly bad about spinning the truth or just blatantly lying. And it's not that that's not the case. It's just, as I pointed out before, people generally accept things that fit in with their existing worldview, and everything Fox is saying is fitting in with their existing worldview. Now, of course, these points are only relevant if what Trump supporters are saying is not true. So I do think we have to delve into that a bit. I'm going to take a couple points that I've heard from several Trump supporters and try to explore them in more detail. Now, one example of the media being dishonest that I have heard from a Trump supporter was that he said that the media was saying that Trump said that people should try drinking bleach to get rid of the coronavirus. I looked at several media sources and I could not find any saying any such thing. I only saw them saying that he suggested having doctors test to see what would happen if household disinfectant was injected into the lungs, though I do concede that they did speculate that with Trump suggesting that might be a viable cure, some people might get the idea to try it at home. Some people might be offended by that, feeling like they are saying that all Trump supporters are dumb enough to drink bleach, but really all they said was that some might be dumb enough to drink bleach. And if you've ever worked in customer service, you would know that in any large group of people, there is always someone dumb enough to be talked into drinking bleach. That said, what he did say, and I did watch the video to confirm this, what he did say was that we should test injecting household disinfectants. Well, technically he just said test to see what happens if we inject disinfectants into the lungs. However, like the news sources I watched pointed out, there is no need to test to see what happens if you inject disinfectants into the lungs, because we already know what happens. You would die. Now, one person who was a conservative that I spoke to explained that Trump didn't mean disinfectants like bleach or hand sanitizer, but that Donald Trump is not a medical professional. He's a layman, and to a layman, anything that kills a virus or bacteria is a disinfectant, whether it's used inside the body, outside the body, if it's an antiviral, antibiotic, or just a surface disinfectant to a layman, that is all a disinfectant. Now, I am unaware of any colloquial term for disinfectant that encompasses such a wide scope of things. But I also don't think this is what Donald Trump was talking about regardless. Because in the clip that I watched, the comments were made after senior official William Bryan had been specifically talking about household cleaners, even mentioning bleach and hand sanitizer, and had a chart up where each of the items were listed alongside how quickly they could kill the coronavirus, and each of the items listed were various household surface level disinfectants. No antibiotics and no antivirals were listed. Furthermore, when Donald Trump himself was asked about this later, he did not make any claims that he was talking about antiviral or antibiotic medications. Instead, he made the claim that he was simply being sarcastic just to see how people would react. Now, I have doubts about this claim as well, because I watched the video, and I am not the best at picking up on sarcasm, but I watched the video several times and I saw no signs of sarcasm. Furthermore, I believe that if he was being sarcastic, even if I am not good at picking up on that, I would have thought that his supporters would have made that argument rather than trying to explain why his suggestion made perfect sense. On to a different subject, a far more recent and emotionally trying subject that I have heard his supporters try to defend, were in regards to the recent protests. I have seen people online question with the fiery support that conservatives have shown for the Second Amendment, arguing that they need their guns to defend their freedoms, their liberties, the First Amendment itself against a possible tyrannical government. How they could feel so strongly and so passionately, yet say nothing during these recent protests when police attack peaceful protesters. Now, the argument I've seen from some Trump supporters is that the Black Lives Matter protests have not been peaceful. Although you can watch my other video to get a lot more detail on my opinion in that, there does appear to be a lot of cell phone footage that does seem to indicate that it is very peaceful. But of course, I do understand how they might wonder, like, okay, I can see what's on this shot and that shot and that shot, but it's a very limited shot. I don't know what's happening off screen that could be triggering this tear gas being shot at these protesters. And I understand that, as we established already in this video, they don't trust the media when the media says that the protest has been peaceful. However, I do question how much they distrust the media, because even if our reporters sometimes get a bit of editorial in their news report, I very much doubt that people carrying around professional video equipment and microphones and all of that are going to be rabble-rousers at an event. And yet, the police in Minneapolis, for some reason, felt the need to arrest CNN reporters despite them having professional video equipment and identifying themselves as reporters. And in Louisville, the police there felt the need to fire pepper shot at a reporter and her film crew despite her wearing a yellow reflective jacket and standing in the designated area for reporters. So you really have to ask if the police are having that much of a difficulty in identifying the difference between rioters and reporters. How can we really trust them when they say that they're only shooting at rioters and not peaceful protesters? Of course, there was one Trump supporter that did have some doubts about the recent events happening to these peaceful protesters and said that it is unfortunate what's going on right now, but Trump will make the economy so strong that it'll benefit everyone, black and white alike, so much that this little hiccup right now won't even matter. And you really have to ask yourself, is Trump really that great for the economy, for black and white alike? If you look at unemployment numbers, at the beginning of June, the black unemployment rate rose to a shocking 16.8%. 8%, despite the fact that 2.5 million jobs were created in May. Now you might say, well, maybe that's just a hiccup with everything going on right now, and maybe it'll sort itself down once everything's calmed down. And okay, then we really have to ask ourselves, is Trump really that great at improving our economy? And for that, one thing we can look at is the GDP rate, which his average GDP growth rate per year is 2.3%, which isn't a bad number. It's better than the average year for Obama, although when you consider that Obama did take office in a recession just as we were coming out of a recession, it's not really, it makes sense why Obama's might be lower, but I can't really prove that's why his were lower. But then if you were to compare his numbers to the average year for a post-World War II president, that average number would be 2.9%, so clearly very much higher than his 2.3%. So he's not terrible, but he's still below average for improving the economy year to year. And of course, the GDP rate doesn't really matter if the average American household isn't seeing an improvement in their lives. And if you look at the average household income in the US, adjusted for inflation, in 2018 there was no significant improvement, and in 2019, again adjusting for inflation, there was only a 0.6% improvement. There was a bit of a better improvement in years prior to those two, but of course you tend to, since you don't know what is influenced by the previous president, to really get a good idea of what your current president is doing, it is better to look at the more recent data. And, even if Donald Trump was great at the economy, which he doesn't really appear to be, but even if he was, is it really worth it? Is it really worth more than freedom to have a bit more money in your pocket? Keep in mind that these riots are over a man getting killed because someone thought he used a counterfeit bill, but really it was actually a legit, valid bill. When you're not even free to go to the store and use legal tender, when someone else, a first responder, was murdered while sleeping in her home because police had a no-knock warrant where they're apparently allowed to just burst into your house, not identify themselves, and then shoot you if they feel threatened, which of course they will because you're startled. And a lot of the people who are Trump supporters are definitely the type to pull out a gun if some stranger knocks down their door without even identifying whether or not they have the right location. Well, is it really worth your freedom for a president that might make you more money? And I also have to ask, because so many Trump supporters are the type to say that they need their guns so that they can fight for their freedom, what is the line, if it was any other president, what is the line where you would say, this president has gone too far, now is the point, we have to stand up and fight? And ask yourself, once you've identified that line, whether Donald Trump has already crossed it. I'm sorry, I just realized I was only supposed to be identifying how Trump supporters think, and I went off into a rant and got a little preachy there. I am sorry about that. But Yeah, I think I covered everything I needed to cover today. So, oh, and I did want to note, if you notice that the channel name changes, that's because I realized that politics and religion at the dinner table is actually way too long for a channel name. And if I want this to catch on, I should probably shorten it. I I'm planning on keeping the segment name the same, although if you think that might work better shortened, I'm shortening the channel name to Dinnertime Discussions. If you think that would work better, just let me know in the comments down below. Well, till next time, bye bye.